こんにちは、ハリケーンフットボールです。今回の教材は、なでしこジャパンに関する動画です。なでしこジャパンはシービリーブスカップでコロンビア、オーストラリア、アメリカと対戦し、3戦全勝で初の優勝を果たしました。歴史的な快挙であり、アメリカを破っての優勝であり、なでしこジャパンの大きな成果だと思います。今回は女子サッカーに特化したチャンネルであるザ・ウィミンズ・ゲームチャンネルから、アメリカ戦後のレビュー動画の中で、元アメリカ代表のサマンサ・ミューイスと、アメリカ生まれながらニュージーランド代表でワールドカップに5大会連続で出場し、キャプテンも務めていたアリ・ライリーが、日本のパフォーマンスに興奮し、日本がいかに素晴らしいプレーをし、いかに素晴らしいチームであったかを話しています。実際にどのように話しているのかチェックしてみましょ
う。Obviously, this is another big point they were making on the broadcast. Japan has come out really quickly in both previous games this tournament. They scored literally, remember in their game against Colombia, the first play of the game, this ball's in the back of the net. Colombia was like, pardon? And then they actually scored in the 6th minute against Australia. And they came out hot today. They scored in the 2nd minute. And I think that just that early pressure really kind of shocked us, put us on our back foot a little bit. Momiki made a dangerous run into our box, received a pass right at the corner of the 6th. And then, unfortunately, Jane Campbell and Emily Son kind of collided, and Momiki was able to spin around and finish that chance off. And I wanted to ask you about this, Ali, specifically as a defender who, you know, leads the back line, prides yourself and the team on shutouts and backline organization. What would this feel like to concede this early? Would that be just so deflating as a defender?
It's so frustrating because, you know, you always say the first 5 minutes of the game, the first 5 minutes after a goal is scored, the first 5 minutes of a half, like there's these key moments where a lot of goals are scored and you're like, damn it, we're another statistic, you know? So there is that frustration because you come out at the beginning of a game, you have this opportunity to set a tone, to have the right mentality. And I think with this type of goal, it wasn't like a in possession mistake that would like shake you or rattle you. I think it was really like, okay, it came from a Japanese throw in. We need to be on our toes. They're so quick at getting in the right positions. They're so fluid in the attack. They have all of these options. Our gaps are too big. And so I think it did help the U.S. tighten up out of possession because you definitely saw after that goal, there were more interceptions. You saw Sonnet and Mikion actually intercept some of these through balls because it was like, oh, we need to be tighter. We need to keep these gaps smaller. So I think you can get deflated. You can, and it depends on what team you're on. With the U.S., I wouldn't be like, oh, no, we're done for with 89 minutes left to play. You know that you can score goals. But I think in this case, because those players are very strong mentally, it would be just more of a little reminder how good Japan is, what they're going to be looking for. And how they scored was exactly their tendencies. And then I do think the U.S. were able to tighten it up.
Totally. I think also, like, speaking of Japan's tendencies, Julie Foudy brought this up in the broadcast that I think, like, the style of this Japan team that we've seen at last summer's Olympics and at the World Cup in 2023 was they were bringing, like, this lethal counterattack and maybe even having less possession than you or I in our history and, you know, traditionally playing against Japan. These more recent iterations of the team have shown this transitional style that's been so effective. But, of course, they have not won either of those tournaments. But it felt like at this, she believes that Japan was not just back to, you know, keeping great possession, playing through those lines really well, really organized, but now also they have this transitional element. And I'm kind of like, hang on, Japan. We're not ready for this. They have such intelligent tactical movement that the thought of having them pair that with this really dangerous transition and counterattack is so scary because they're already so difficult to play against. What is it that you think makes Japan so singular and so like uniquely difficult to play against?
I think it is their fluidity. I think it is the overlapping, the underlapping. You have the player on the ball has so many options and they recognize the options so quickly. So it doesn't take time for the runs to come to make a decision. It happens so quick. And so you step to someone, they've already played to somebody else. And then, like you say, they also have this dynamic now. They're moving so quickly in the counter. and with the types of crosses they put in, and they are good in the air. It was talked about so much when they played Australia, like Australia is going to have the one up on them because of their aerial presence, and Japan scored headers. Like, they just bring so much to the table. But I think when you're trying to defend and they can play to the left of you, to the right of you, they can scoop one over the top knowing that their first touch is so good. And now too, how fast they get up, they also recovered so quickly, because I was starting to say, why isn't the U.S. taking advantage of a counter? And if they played one slow pass or one pass and someone didn't decide to go straight to goal, you suddenly had them all sprinting back and recovering. So I think maybe their fitness too is like just unreal.
I know. I think that's a really great point that we will definitely circle back to at the end, because I'm with you that at the end of the game when we're down a goal, I'm like, guys, we have to go. But to your point, Ali, it wasn't really on to go. Like, they were recovering so well. So Japan really just checking a lot of boxes, good on so many levels. Obviously not ideal for the U.S. to go down a goal early. That was not in anybody's plan. But we did answer quickly. In the 14th minute, Kat Macario was able to check in off the line, get herself turned around her defender, kind of as like, we call it a false 9 or a withdrawn 9 position. And that's what I want to ask you about that, Ali. She turned her player, played Ali Setnor in behind the back line. Ali received the pass, buried at far post. A really positive response from the U.S. and an opportunity for us to reset and breathe and, not be chasing the game from down a goal again. Ali Setnor has been a huge presence for this team this tournament. Her instincts around goal seem to be really spot on. But what I want to talk about is how Kat's movement, checking off the back line as that 9 and drawing a Japanese center back with her, opened up space and gaps in that back line for Ali Setnor to make that central run cutting in from the wing. Can you just talk us through that from the back line's perspective? What are they supposed to do? Kat executed that so well. Is there an answer, or was this just like really great play from Kat and Ali?
I think it's one of the few times we did see Japan's backline stretched, because they're so organized. They're so compact. I think that's why Emma wanted to change things up and have a little bit more width with Niswanger, with Alyssa. In that case, when the timing was so good for her to draw her out, and then for Setnor to get on that wrong side of the fullback because she was so central, and her first touch too, it was a little bit big, but she's so dynamic, she's so quick, and her finish was so good. So I think you have to be, as a defender, it's one of those times where you almost have to predict what's going to happen, that someone drags you in, so you start closing in, but there's always a risk if you do something before it actually happens. And so that's why it's just such good timing on their part. And Macario, her touch, the precision, everything, it was such a good play. And that was the interesting thing, where I see not only Japan evolving their game a little bit, but also this is a different US than, those of us gals in our mid to late 30s. You're seeing these US players have very, very good technique. Similar, like there were moments in the game where the US was playing almost like this technical tiki-taka, playing one, getting around the other, like Japan was doing. But then I was like, wait, but now Japan is having this fast counterattack that the US
we used to do.
Yes. So I was like, this is like the metaverse. I don't know. But that play was beautiful.
That's so actually really fascinating to think about, just the evolution of teams, the evolution of the game, where now teams are becoming more well-rounded, and like maybe stereotypically of the US team, athletic, they pump it long, they serve cross in the box, isn't necessarily true anymore, which I definitely don't think is true anymore.
Yeah.
But similarly with Japan, where it's like they've always relied on this technical, playing through the lines, possession, and they're developing this new kind of branch of their style of play. It's incredible to think about where the game can go as teams evolve and grow their identities. I want to go back to Kat.
次は解説です。久しぶりにアメリカ英語を話す動画でしたが、やはりアメリカ英語の方がリスニングは簡単でしょうか。R の発音がより強いので、R の発音ができない方にはリスニングも難しいと思いますので、自分でも話せるようにトレーニングすればリスニングも楽になると思います。今回は難しいボキャブラリーもほとんどなかったので、その面でもリスニングが簡単だったと思います。解説も簡単なものしかありませんが、本日の解説をチェックしてみましょ
Jane Campbell and Emily Son kind of collided and
コライドは衝突する、ぶつかるという意味を持つ動詞です。物理的な接触だけでなく、意見の対立や文化の衝突を表現する際にも使われます。例えば、サッカーの試合で選手同士がぶつかった時や、ビジネスの場面で意見が対立した時に使われます。映画やドラマでは、価値観の衝突や運命的な出会いなどの意味でも使われることがあります。特に野球でよく言われるコリジョンルールはホームでのタッチプレーの際に、ランナーがキャッチャーにぶつかってボールを落とさせるプレーを禁止しているルールですが、コリジョンの動詞の形がコライドですね。
Jane Campbell and Emily Son kind of collided, and Jane Campbell and Emily Son kind of collided, and would that be just so deflating as a defender?
デフレートは空気が抜ける、しぼむという物理的な意味と、意気消沈する、自信をなくすという比喩的な意味の両方で使われます。例えば、風船やタイヤの空気が抜けるときにも使いますし、試合に負けて気持ちがしぼむといった心理的な状況を表すこともできます。ビジネスでは経済を収縮させるという意味でも使われ、いわゆるインフレとデフレのことですね。
Would that be just so deflating as a defender? Would that be just so deflating as a defender?
You have this opportunity to set a tone.
セットエイトーンは雰囲気を作る、方向性を決めるという意味のフレーズです。例えば、スポーツでは試合の流れを作ること、ビジネスではリーダーシップを発揮し会社の方針を示すことを指します。日常会話では場の雰囲気を決めたり、会話のトーンを変えるときにも使われます。フォーマルな場面からカジュアルな会話まで幅広く使えます。
You have this opportunity to set a tone. You have this opportunity to set a tone. We need to be on our toes.
Be on one's toes は油断せず、常に警戒を怠らないという意味の表現です。もともとは、スポーツの試合で素早く動けるようにつま先、トーズに重心を置く姿勢から来ており、例えば、試合中の選手が相手の動きを素早く察知する場面や、ビジネスで競争相手に対して常に警戒している状況などで使われます。
We need to be on our toes. We need to be on our toes.
They were bringing like this lethal counterattack.
リーサルは致命的な、非常に危険なという意味を持つ形容詞で、もともとは命に関わるような危険を指しますが、スポーツやビジネスでは決定的な、圧倒的なという意味で使われます。例えば、サッカーの試合で決定的なシュートを表現するときや、企業の戦略が強豪にとって致命的な打撃を与える場面などで使われます。
They were bringing like this lethal counterattack. They were bringing like this lethal counterattack. These more recent iterations of the team.
イテレーションは何かを繰り返すことで改善していくことを意味する単語です。単なる繰り返しだけでなく、改良を重ねた結果生まれた新しい形という意味でもよく使われ、特にデザインや製品開発、プログラミング、スポーツチームの進化などの文脈でよく使われます。例えば、スマートフォンの新しいモデルは、前のバージョンの改良版という意味でイテレーションと言えます。スポーツの文脈では、最近の日本代表のバージョンというように、チームの進化を表現するのに使われます。
These more recent iterations of the team, these more recent iterations of the team,
They can scoop one over the top.
スコープは、すくう、独占記事、大量に得るという意味を持つ単語です。もともとはスプーンなどで、すくう動作を指しますが、ジャーナリズムでは、スクープ、つまり独占記事を意味し、ビジネスやスポーツでは、大量に手に入れる、試合を決定づけるプレーというニュアンスで使われることもありますし、今回のように、すくい上げるパスを意味することもあります。
They can scoop one over the top. They can scoop one over the top.
いかがでしたか？なでしこジャパンは結果だけでなく、内容でも相手を圧倒した上での優勝だったということがわかりますね。3試合トタルで見ればなおさら、流れるようなパス回しあり、連携プレーあり、セットプレーあり、ヘディングあり、豪快なミドルシュートありと。大量の得点ができたのは、確かにあらゆる種類のプレーから攻撃を生み出しているからでしょう。まだ他にもなでしこジャパンを称賛し、分析しているような動画もありますので、希望が多いようであれば、もう少し取り上げたいと思いますので、コメントやいいね、メッセージでも何なりと教えてください。本日もご視聴いただきありがとうございました。またすぐにお会いしましょう。